this is Chuck from Monocoque Metalworks. We're in the middle of doing a series where we mate the new floor and sill assembly to this original 67 shell, but this is kind of a supplemental video that's going into the middle of it. Yesterday, I discovered that I had made an error in putting things together, and it's something that we could have just fixed, cleaned up, moved on, never mentioned. But I've decided to go ahead and talk about it because there's really a strong lesson to be learned here in that when you find a problem, when you find that you've done something out of whack or something's a little bit out of adjustment or maybe a lot out of adjustment, you've got to stop right then and there, fix it so you can go forward with everything in the right alignment. If you try to just get by with it because that work's already done, you're going to regret it in several steps down the road. And the worst part is you're always going to know it's not right, and it's just going to haunt you for the rest of the time you're working on the car. What happened to us was when we build these floors, we build the floor assembly in the jig, and then we introduce the original body down onto it. And in about the past 3 or 4 cars that we've done, we've put this subframe tubing. We run a piece of tubing under here, and we run a piece of tubing in the rear lower bulkhead. We've run that rear lower bulkhead tubing all the way across through the drive shaft tunnel, and there's plenty of room for that in there. By doing it that way, it really stiffens the floor and it straightens the floor. We hold the floor in our jig by the radius cup, and so everything's nice and straight. This car was done the old way because the tunnel was in great shape, so we only put this tube in when we built the floor, and we introduced 2 smaller pieces of tubing back here in the rear lower bulkhead that end at the tunnel. Because they weren't in yet, everything wasn't dead straight back here. The floor was actually drooping down out in this section because it's got this big tube in the side, and I guess things were kind of twisted. You'll notice that in the previous video, this was all nicely spot welded with our big spot welder, and it's now plug welded. This sill was drooping down, and the sill was down in this corner, not quite a 1/4 inch. Turned out to be 3/16, maybe a little bit closer to a 1/4. We talked about a lot of different ways to wing it, move forward. We didn't want the further videos of this series to look different here, but I just decided to go ahead and show you guys this because, again, you've got to stop, fix the problem, and then move forward. So what we ended up doing was drilling out all of our own spot welds. That didn't turn out to be too tough. And then we jacked up this corner, left everything else bolted in the frame. It was just twisted down this corner. We jacked it up. We put screws in here and plug welded it. Now, it just pained me to have to redo that and now have these plug welds in here. But the truth is, 6 years ago, we didn't have the big spot welder, and they all look just like this with plug welds. And the plug welds are a little bit stronger. So I did take some videos during that process. I wasn't sure if I was going to use them or not, but I'm going to go ahead and edit this and attach those little clips after this so you can see how we fix that and move forward. You definitely want to do that when you find a problem. Stop right then and there and fix it. See, everybody makes mistakes, even us here. I have figured out that we have spot welded this B-post to the inner sill with the whole 9 yards drooping down about a 1/4 inch. And that became real obvious when I went to go weld these bars in. You see that 1/4 inch there? It's sagging at just outside of the radius cup because this is where the jig holds it. And it's sagging there because everything's just kind of pushing down. And as you can see, this should be right in line with that rib there. I don't know how I missed it, but I missed it when things get kind of hot and heavy sometimes, and I don't know, I just missed it. So now I have to drill out all of these spot welds and jack this up to where it needs to be, and then I'll have to plug weld it back into place. So even the pros make mistakes sometimes, but the thing to get out of this is don't just keep going with it screwed up. Stop, get it where it needs to be, whatever you got to do, and then move forward, because you're going to be paying for it for the rest of all time in every step after this, and it's just wrong. So, time to get to work drilling out my own spot welds. Okay, I just drilled out all these spot welds. They're actually a lot easier to drill when they're new and nice and neat versus all rusted. So they're all out, and I've run a thick putty knife underneath of them, so we are completely disconnected now. And I haven't really done any damage here. You can see underneath, there's my row, and you can see just in the center, just a little kiss from the drill point. Then up here, I had a couple go through a little bit. But that's all gonna get plug welded. So you're just gonna see a burn mark, and I'll probably use some screws too. You'll have this exact pattern shifted down about 1/4 inch. So stand by for that. Okay, we've gotten a floor jack under that corner. And remember, the radius cup is attached to the whole frame table and jig here. It was just drooping in that corner. And so we've jacked that corner up, and you can see where it has slid down quite a bit. Not quite 1/4 inch, but you can see the old holes underneath, especially here in the, we're almost at 1/4 inch in the back. Maybe, but 3/16 everywhere. And then what has happened here is that this section here, it has slid up and around and out like that way. So now I'm going to put the screws in and plug weld it. Plug weld all of that's top part too. Well, I ran the screws through so I could get that full penetration I'm always talking about with each plug weld, and that pretty much tells the story of how much it moved down. So it seemed to move down a little bit farther in the back, but we are almost 1/4 inch. All right, that little problem has been remedied, so crisis averted. And we've got a little bit not quite as pretty plug welds as we had spot welds before, but these are actually stronger than the spot welds.